me for it.
Yes. So the last topic is looking at the Eastern Conference. And we mentioned it a couple times in this episode earlier where the East got better. Everyone in the East got better. This isn't the same thing as last year where, you have a couple good teams and then it drops off. Pretty much I can say like 1 to 10 is very competitive. And which is exciting because what is it? 7 to 10 is the playing team. So that's going to be pretty fun this year. And I'm hearing a lot of different lists from media people, and what I constantly see on these lists is the Boston Celtics. People rate them very, very high. And some people are saying number like they're probably going to be the 3 seed, maybe anywhere from 3 to 6 is where I generally see them. And I wanted to get your first impressions. What do you think of the Boston Celtics, and how do you think they're going to finish?
Yeah, so I'm of the mindset that I didn't see enough in this all season that made me think that they've lifted themselves above of the likes of the teams that they were having issues with getting seeding against, right? You have the Heat that have gotten better. Yes, they've brought in some players that have gotten them better as well too. Bringing in Schroeder, bringing in um uh I'm trying to remember who else that they brought in over the off season.
So I have a
Um,
list of all the moves that they made. So first, new head coach, no more Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens was their poster child for a while, and then last season it blew up. So he's the GM now. You have Ime Udoka on the team, which I actually wanted to get your feedback on. He was an assistant coach for the Nets. How do you think he
and he
fits as
comes
the head
from the
coach?
he comes from the Spurs family as
Yes.
well, right? So I like that for them, right? The coach decision, right?
Yeah.
But I think that if you have a fundamental issue, which was Brad Steven at the head coach, is he had some frictions with some players. Well, how was that really addressed? There was no real resolution in that situation. You just move them up into the front office doesn't really address it in my mind. So
Yeah.
I think there's still going to be some lingering issues that come from that. Yes, I love the Ima Duka like move to move him into the coaching seat, right? But like I said, those teams that they were contending against got better.
Yeah.
The Sixers, I think, are going to slide down. Still think they're better than the
Yeah.
Celtics. You had the Heat, they got better. You got the Knicks, they got better. You have the Hawks. They didn't really get to put much onto the team,
But
but
they
I
should be
still
better.
perceive
Yeah.
them as a better team. And then they didn't address the biggest issue. Getting an older Al Horford does not address the
Yes.
issue that was the persisting issue for almost the last 3 years now, is shoring up that front court depth. And that's still the problem.
Yeah.
What did he's not going
So
to be real resolution
yeah.
to this problem.
So the moves that they did, they traded Kemba Walker in a 2021 first round pick and a 2025 a second round pick for Al Horford, and who wasn't actually very healthy last season. Similar situation. You have Kemba Walker who's sitting out back to backs. Al Horford at 35 years old, also sat out back to backs last season. In that trade, you got back Moses Brown, who they then moved on for Josh Richardson. You signed Ennis Cantor, 29-year-old guy, to a 1 year, $2.7 million contract. They re signed Marcus Smart, gave him an extension, 4 years, 76 mil, which I actually think is a pretty fair contract for him. You got Dennis Schroeder to a 1 year, $5.9 million contract, and you lose Evan Fournier. Those are the moves that they made.
I don't love them. I don't love them. I really do not love those moves. Let's put it as this. Let's go over the teams that are going to contend with them at that spot what key additions they made, and let's talk about where they
Yeah.
stack compared
I
to.
apologize to cut you off real quick. They also added Juancho Hernan Gomez. I forgot to add him. But I don't want
Oh,
any Celtics fans out there to be mad that I forgot somebody.
it's crazy that you forgot him because that actually just makes them a
Yeah.
title contender. But in all seriousness, I'm looking at like what the Knicks key additions were, right? They
Yep.
bring in Kemba Walker. They bring in Evan Fournier, who is a player that just left that Celtics team,
Both of them
right?
just left. You know, it's pretty funny
Exactly.
though. A fun fact: Evan Fournier and Kemba Walker was actually one of their best lineups, or like two-way lineup or two-man duos that they had on their team last year. So they lost that.
And that's, well, there you go.
Yeah.
And then you look at the Heat. You look at the Heat, and I'm going to tell you exactly what the NBA.com power ranking says of key additions right here. The Heat brought in the thickness with Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker. I kid you not. I did not make that up. If you go on NBA.com
Wow.
on power rankings for the East, it says thickness. And then it has in parentheses Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker. And then they brought in Markieff Morris. That already sounds like a better, right up
Oh
there
yeah.
with the Celtics offseason, right?
Mhm.
You bring up the Sixers really didn't get that much better, but what I say to that is that they still have an MVP
Yeah.
candidate in Joel Embiid. Then you look at the Hawks. Once again, they didn't bring in anyone either, but they have an insane young core. And then let's go even higher because you said top three, right? You
Yep.
bring up you bring up the Bucks. Are they really going to contend with the Bucks at this point? Bucks key additions were Grayson Allen, George Hill, and Semi Ojale, another Celtic right there.
Yeah.
But granted, those are amazing like pickups, but still they're the reigning champions
Yeah.
for a reason.
They were already better than them to begin with.
Exactly. And then there's no reason to even discuss the Brooklyn Nets at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you look at all of those teams ahead of them from last year, and they all, in my mind, still in perception wise, are better than them. And then you now bring up a team, just to slide one more team in there. You bring up the Bulls that some people
Boy.
feel really good about this year, and some people a little iffy on them, right? But they
Mhm.
bring in Lonzo Ball, they bring in DeMar DeRozan, and they bring in Alex Caruso. Time will only tell how good they get, but I
Yep.
think that's exactly where the Celtics are, is vying with them. Jason Tatum, obviously, a once in a generation type talent. So I wouldn't shy away that, but there's only so much he could do with that team.
Yeah, that I think that's the biggest thing of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. We all know these two guys are very good, and the only way they can ever be that high as top of third seed or even anywhere else, from 4 to maybe 4 and 5, if they wanted to be there, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to take major steps up, because looking at the rest of their team, they kind of did not improve. They didn't really do that much. And yet I see everyone going crazy about what the Celtics did. And it's confusing. Like we talk about, the head coach, I love the pickup, but also he's a first year head coach. It should be interesting to see what they have, what's going to happen there. I hope the best there. But you sign Enes Kanter, who they had already. They let him go for a reason, and this man is 29 years old. He should be in his prime, and yet he's every year signing 1 year contracts. He just signed $2.7 million contract. Anyone else could have had Enes Kanter, and they decided not to. Like I mentioned, Al Horford, a lot of injury problems with him. Dennis Schroeder, another guy where kind of anybody could have had him. And he's been regressing. He's been regressing since he played with Chris Paul. And as we saw when he played with Chris Paul, he looked amazing. But last year with LeBron and all these other guys, he wasn't the greatest. And as it's kind of comparable of what you had with Kemba Walker, now you have with Dennis Schroeder. There's something you can say to there, but I'll just leave it as that. It's kind of comparable. Not the greatest. The man is not a good 3-point shooter. Last season he shot 33%. That's not going to help with their spacing. I like you keeping Marcus Smart, but that doesn't really do much. And it's just like I don't understand of how they were last season and how they're going to get better. And especially like we mentioned when everyone else got better. That's where I am with the Celtics. I see them as high as potentially 5. I think that's the highest they go, and potentially dropping to 8. I think that's their range.
I agree. I really don't think there's much contention on that because, like, I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a hard team to, we could be wrong.
Yeah,
Like
we definitely could.
we really could be wrong, right? But based off of what I saw in the off season, I think for them to do what anyone thinks that they're going to do to get to third, you're seeing an MVP year out of Tatum this year. That's what you're seeing.
Yep.
That's
the only
honestly because I just generally don't see them taking that jump into that far up, into the standings.